Well, good, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Services and Organisation Committee meeting. No, everybody in attendance, so there's no apologies, no presentations or deputations today, as far as I'm aware. So we'll move straight on with item 1, the training management and maintenance preferred supplier arrangement tender acceptance. Councillor, do we have any questions for?
You probably haven't met Alan Hull face to face yet. Alan's been working from home. He's back with us now, so Alan runs our outdoor workforce. Matt
Good afternoon, everyone.
Parks and Gardens. So.
Hi.
Both based over at the depot.
I have a few questions. I'll start up the top. Active tree services. I note that active tree services is listed as #1 preference in the preferred supply agreement in all the categories, actually, category 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I also note that other tenders have come in at a lower price or close to active tree services prices. In some categories, other suppliers have scored higher in category of contributions to local economy. First, I understand that purchasing decisions are made on the basis of value for money, not the cheapest, so I understand that. My question is, when the prices are so close, does Council detail the reasons why preference was not provided to a supplier who has provided evidence of higher local social contribution? That's my first question.
Do you want? I'll take that one.
Sure.
The list is in alphabetical order, not in order.
Oh, not in order.
It's not
Right.
a ranked panel.
Okay.
So all suppliers that are selected in each of those categories that we've listed are included in the panel, but not necessarily in the order that is listed here in the report. We have assessed all suppliers against the criteria to form the panel, and when it comes down to awarding the work, the factors that you're talking about in terms of value for money are definitely taken into consideration. And we have what goes along with this arrangement is what's called a panel management plan,
Yep.
which sets out thresholds by which we will go to quote at higher values. So that's our opportunity to assess the price component of the work.
And
When I look at the first table, for example, active tree services might be the second, but if the price component is only 15% of the overall weight of the overall assessment, and the top 85% there is capability, resourcing, contract experience, methodology, quality, health and safety, all those other categories. So pricing in the first item there in particular only pays 15%. I think that's true across the board, is it not?
Yes. The weighting applies to all suppliers
And all categories of work. Yeah.
do you encourage a price preference of, say, 10% or 15% to the purchase of socially preferable products? Do you sort of factor the importance of local content, or is there a local content benefit test?
Not quite as such. How we work it is depending on the type of work that we've got. A lot of the time it'll just be a very small job, so we'll go for people who are local, close to us, that can respond quickly. So some of these some of the suppliers on this list, like Active, as you mentioned before, and a couple of the other ones, are probably based further away. Yep. And then there's about 4 or 5 of them that are very local. So we would usually prefer those people in those types of cases. The other one is that we generally, for larger quantities of work, we go to quote within the panel. So we'll put out the job in a short invitation to quote to the whole panel, and whoever wants to bid for that work will then do a quick little assessment. And a lot of the time, depending on the value for money component and the amount of work, a lot of the time you get the economies of scale. So someone that's based further away might be charging a better price, so they'll win the job in that case. But other times it'll go to people that are closer and who can actually attend to the job the quickest and deliver it.
It may be that not everyone's available.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, at
yeah.
a particular given time, they've got a work schedule that doesn't meet
They do.
your work needs at a particular time.
Yeah, we probably don't have enough work as a whole to keep businesses employed all the time. So a lot of these suppliers, they work up and down the coast. Yeah.
So,
Just the other thing is, in the assessment you'll see in the attachments that there is a weighting for the local issue, 5%, which we put a weighting on that.
just one.
Anything else, Camille?
Yeah. I'm sorry. No.
Any other questions? Camille?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I understand that trimming is carried under strict guidelines to ensure that safety from electricity networks. However, sometimes this results in harsh and dramatic pruning or over pruning. I know this because I've actually had a complaint just recently from a lady in Sunshine Beach. Is there any way that council can provide supplier guidelines around its trimming techniques?
Yeah, we certainly do that. I mean, part of this putting this panel together and the weightings, there was a section there on capability, track record, experience. So all of that, like we're confident that the majority of these, well, all of these people here, but particularly the ones that we've used in the past, meet those standards. There's Australian standards across the board for all different types of tree work, so pruning, planting, and even felling. There's Australian standards that across all of that all these suppliers should be across, and definitely on the panel are across based upon their submissions.
Most likely, the harsh pruning is normally done by Energex contractors around power lines.
Yes.
It actually
Energex
was,
to do it.
It's not, so that's not from this panel. This is works that council organises. Although we do have an MOU with Energex that relates to their tree works around power lines, and that does specify Australian standards for pruning. And from time to time, we do need to go back to Energex and point out that their contractors have pruned too harshly.
Okay.
But our officers do have liaison with people in Energex, and they deal with those factors. But that's not done by these contractors. We rarely have issues with over pruning from our contractors.
Yeah, there'd be a number of entities that would have tree clearing services utilised within the Shire, not just ourselves and Energex, but
That's right. I mean, Energex don't
we're probably the most common.
don't want to come back,
Yeah.
too often to do it, and lately they have taken a fairly
Strong
approach. Yeah.
And there's also been that pruning out on the main roads, which
Yeah.
the main roads contractors have undertaken that. There's been some comments on Facebook and that it might have been
Been a
council.
long time between clearing though. With main
That's
roads.
right. Yeah.
Just one more general questions in relation to PSAs. Is there a provision for the evaluation of the arrangements, including the removal of a service provider from an arrangement because of poor performance, cost blowouts and variations?
Yeah.
There is? Great.
Yes, there is. That's contained within the panel management plan that I mentioned before. So all the contractors are evaluated for their performance through the duration of that arrangement, and there are dispute clauses in the contract as well that we can, through our procurement team, engage with the contractor, try and resolve it. But if their performance isn't up to scratch, they can ultimately be removed from the arrangement.
It would be something that you consider next time those arrangements are due for renewal again as well. But it'd be something to be under consideration, I would imagine, as well.
And do you carry out due diligence of service providers? And
So that we undertake annual audits on all the contractors that we use, and in regards to performance, and also safety, and anyone that's not, there's KPIs attached to that, and anyone who's not meeting them get a a bit of a talking to in terms of upping their standards. If they don't meet them, as referred to, they don't get used.
So it's part of the tender process. The suppliers are required to provide copies of, their insurance, public liabilities, all of those.
Work method statements.
Yeah. So all of that is provided as part of the tender process, and the advantage of doing it this way is when we come to engage the contractors to carry out the work, they're already essentially pre-qualified through that process before they've been appointed to the panel.
Thank you.
And that'd be true of all the tenders that we undergo, regardless of whether it's tree clearing or
Yes,
any other form of tender.
that's correct.
I've got a question. Have you finished now?
Oh, you can go ahead.
Yeah. I've just got one question. Just a lot of the emails I get are in relation to people who feel that the trees are dangerous, or they're hanging over, they've got branches, or they're a fire hazard or things like that, or they're on the side of the road and potential to fall if there's a storm. So what is the process that if there is those community concerns, do you then, is this under part of tree assessment and consultancy that you send people out, or these people, or is it a council who goes out and assesses the tree and determines how dangerous it is? What's the process?
Well, it could be either or. We have our own arborists, qualified arborists on staff, and we can access consultants through Category 4 on this arrangement as well. So the process normally is that a resident that might be concerned about the tree on council land will contact council through customer service normally, and then it would be assigned to Matt's team to go and investigate. Depending on the workload of our arborist and other factors, we might decide to get an external arborist to go and do the work. So it's on a case by case.
And all of it, whether it's the staff or the consultants, we've got a tree management on public land policy, which was adopted, I think, last year through the council and possibly the year before.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So that's basically the guideline that all of the jobs get compared to. So whether or not works are justified, we get a lot of requests for trees that drop leaves and it's just a bit of a nuisance. So that's where we say no, definitely to those ones.
Healthy trees.
Yeah. So we won't be removing trees that aren't showing signs of decline or poor structure or that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's all measured against that generally.
Okay.
Tree request last time I looked was in the top 3.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how are the numbers? We're still high up there.
Yeah, always high
You
up.
tend to get a rush on those after the storm season as well.
Yeah.
People or around that, people get a bit worried about it, or the big blow, people tend to do a bit more as well. So.
And we got a rush after the bushfires as well.
Yeah.
Anything else?
What was the peak of requests you're getting for tree issues? Was it 2,000 a month or something?
It wouldn't have been
About 300 a month.
300 a month.
Yeah.
Not even 2,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Still.
typically 2,000 a year we've been getting
2,000
historically.
a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was in the couple of thousand a year.
Can I just ask, there's 16 preferred suppliers on this list. How does that compare to the number you had on the previous list?
25.
Yeah, so the previous list didn't have those categories, and it was just, I think we had 25 or 26 just all together. And because of our workload, we can't sustain that amount we can't supply regular work to that amount of suppliers. So in doing it this way, we've got, maximum 10 in any given category. There are a couple of those categories there that have only got 3. That's because we just have fairly minimal amounts of that type of work.
Yeah. And so did you still have the same 26 apply, but they just didn't make the cut?
I think we had about 24 it might have applied, I think it was, yeah.
Not all of the suppliers from our current panel have re-tendered this time round, and we've got some new ones in this time. It just depends on which companies have tendered each year. But all of our regular contractors, they're still they've still tendered and we've still recommended them.
And this arrangement will start from effectively after the budget's approved in July.
It'll start most likely in July. It's just a matter of going through, getting the council resolution and then going through our procurement team to get the documentation in place.
Yes.
At the moment, we've extended our existing arrangement month to month until we get this new one in place.
Yes.
I'm also assuming within here the different contracts would have different capabilities with regard to the equipment they've got available for working at extreme heights and things like those.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why it's good to have in those for your main type of tree works at least 10 suppliers, because we got there's ones out there that have got massive 30-metre towers, and you've got like your local guys that just ground-based crews that can get in and do the tight.
Or guys that can pick their way up trees as well.
That's right. Climbers and there's a
And it says the pricing put forward by suppliers on the panel does not represent a large increase compared to the previous panel arrangement pricing. It should not impact on the quantity or quality of works achieved. Do you have a dollar value on that difference?
Yeah, it was. I did a comparison. I looked at the previous supply, the current suppliers in the current panel, and what their rates were at the time that they got on that, and then I compared it to for the same ones that had re-tendered what their new pricing was. Some had gone up by small increments, others hadn't changed. I think on average, when I looked at it, it was really only around a sort of a CPI type 2 to 3% type of increase. So obviously we work to a finite budget every year, so we just do what we can within that.
Given that prices do change over time, and this is a multi-year contract, multi-year.
Yeah, it's a 2 plus
some rise
3
and fall arrangement within the tender. I'm capable for
I think we've got provision for CPI, haven't we?
I'm not. So I believe that there's CPI provisions.
There's provision for CPI.
Yeah.
So when the council approves the budget, this Arborist Services Cost Centre, which pays these suppliers, so there's funds set aside, like basically business as usual funds set aside for that activity within the maintenance, within the budget for the civil ops department.
Yes,
Yeah.
but there is. Yeah. Assuming council approves it.
Yes, yeah. And it's works out to be 1.2 million a year.
Yeah, it's about
for the activities. This is what you've got in the report.
Yep. That was last year's figure. Yeah.
About the same plus CPI.
Yeah. Well,
It depends on the workload, doesn't it?
That's across the entire Arborist Services budget. The bulk of it by far is contract services tree works, which will come in around about the 950. On top of that, we need traffic control for any works that are done on roadsides.
So those major tree works, is that predominantly pruning and moving dangerous trees, or is that?
That category?
Yeah, what would 950,000 entail?
It's essentially that. It's across all of those categories that we've provided in these arrangements. The bulk of it being the tree works component, but there's a small amount, like Matt says, that would be for tree planting, and also for consultancy services when we need an arborist to go in and do inspections.
But you're right in that major tree works is removal and pruning.
Yeah.
And Matt, would these contractors be involved in the clearing of fire access trails?
No, that's run by Natural Area Environment Services, but I think they'll utilise this panel because they can share. Anyone in council can have access to this panel.
Okay.
So we have the Natural Areas team that access this panel.
Yes.
Some of the other project managers in the design, infrastructure design and delivery utilise the panel, and I think even some of the community facilities also access the panel.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's correct. The numbers I'm saying are the civil operations budget, but like Matt says, natural areas have a component of their budget for tree management on bushland reserves, and they'd access this panel as well.
So you're in a new a road widening or something like that, or a new pathway going through, there'd be a tree removal component if there were trees to be removed within their budget for that project, I would assume, not out of your budget, not out of this budget.
Now this is for works within parks and roads. Yeah.
Any further? All good? Happy to move it. Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Claire. All in favour? Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Matt.
Matt.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
We've learned a lot of effort. RADF, item 2, RADF group recommendation.
Kerry's online. Kerry and Ali.
Oh, there she is.
Yes.
I'm going to have to
Hi everybody, how are you?
Oh, hello.
Good.
Alison's at the Aurora Borealis.
I'm going to have to declare a perceived conflict of interest in this. Actually, I am. One of the recipients here is the Great Upcycling Challenge and Exhibition, of which I've been the one of the judges for almost 2 years. So, on that basis, I think I should leave the room.
Thank you. Good. Kylie's got the details there.
No, I hadn't put forward to it. I've just realised.
Which one is it?
Which one
Great,
is it, Joe?
it's the Hinterland Art Group Incorporated, the Great Upcycling Challenge and Exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
So just explain.
6 down. Yeah.
So just the basis of your.
Well, I'm actively involved in having supported the activity and been a judge of the exhibition for the past 2 years. And this is the first time I believe they've applied for RADF funding and are in this are an applicant in this category. So
You're declaring a
conflict of interest and
choosing to leave the room.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you to
Yep, I'll sort out the rest.
point a new chair.
So, councillors, when a chair has a conflict of interest and leave the room, I then need to call for someone to chair the meeting for us to deal with this item. So I call nominations for someone to deal with it. We end up with a seconder for that nomination. All those in favour, against, then that person assumes the chair for the purpose of this item, and then when we finish this item, the normal chair comes back in and we continue the meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So I was going to call for nominations for someone to chair the meeting for the consideration of item number 2.
I'll move that Councillor Stewart be the chair.
I'll second that.
Yeah,
You,
all right.
you weren't quick enough. Yeah. Okay, all those, moved by Councillor Wilkley, seconded by Councillor Lawrenston, that Councillor Stewart chair the meeting for the consideration of item 2. All those in favour?
Can I
You do it from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is in regard to the recommendation that Council note the report by the Community Development Manager to the Services and Organisation Committee meeting dated 9th of June 2020 and approve the Regional Arts Development Fund recommendations for 2019-20 Round 2 funding as outlined in Attachment 1 to the report.
And we've got Kerry and Alison online to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
I've got a question, Kerry, or for Alison. What was the interest in terms of applications like for this round? Was it affected by COVID in any way, or were they just as strong as usual?
It was actually pre-COVID, so it was actually the closing date was pretty much when COVID was starting. So yes, we did have a high level of interest, and our Community Development Officer, Belinda Simonson, worked very actively with probably about 20 potential applicants, and it got narrowed down to 10 actually submitting.
Okay. And how does that compare to the normal rate of application?
Yeah, it's pretty normal.
Okay.
Alison, Claire here. The our RADF committee has recommended 7 applications totaling $30,685 for funding. Is this on par with previous years, or is it less because of COVID, or where are we at with funding wise in this regard?
Yes, so it's a partnership with Arts Queensland. So they provide us with $25,000 towards the grant program. So we have about $50,000 for 2 rounds per year.
Yeah.
So our first round, we didn't expend the whole $25,000. We were just a bit short of that. So this allowed us to spend the $30,000 this time. So it was quite a competitive round. The 3 applicants that were unsuccessful this particular round were still very strong applicants. Hence, they were working very closely with our development officer to develop their applications. However, they were just, because it was such a competitive round and they didn't show some of the supporting evidence behind it, we've actually asked them to resubmit for the next round.
Okay.
So Regional Arts Development Funds runs from September to September.
Yeah.
So we need to apply each year. But we can generally predict that when we get around the $50,000 mark, with $25,000 coming from council.
Okay.
Just a comment, Alison. Just when I looked at the grant recommendations, it just appeared to be a really good mix of applicants. You've got musicians, dancers, artists, painters, printmakers, singers and actors, and the projects seemed really diversified and sort of fit the brief. They appear to benefit local arts practitioners, arts workers and the community. Looked great.
Excellent, thank you. We're really excited to have Councillor Finzel join us as the chairperson next round, so it'll be great to work with her.
She's currently present in the gallery and she looks very excited as well.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Lawrence, and I think there's a great diversity here. You've got the Lullaby Ensemble for new mums, you've got the under 40 exhibition, you've got the Noosa Dance for seniors. I think it's a really good mix and represents a diverse and wide range of the community. So I think it's great.
Thank you.
Happy to move.
Yeah, you happy?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll go and get Councillor Juristovic to come back and chair again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Is that item finished?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Item 3, 2021 budget public consultation trial.
This one's been requested to go through to General, Mr. Chair.
I understand that.
Further
Are we
discussions?
having any questions for staff before it goes?
Maybe just a question about what information the councillors would need.
Yeah,
What
look,
issues?
a heads up. I'll start with the question. The budget, councils have the latitude to delay the ratification of the budget by to what date is it, Mr. CEO?
Yeah, under the regulation, councils have to adopt their budget by 31st of July each year. Under that, theoretically, the minister can give extensions of time. In previous years, he normally doesn't like giving extensions, but I understand that this year they are open to giving extensions more for some councils. But the majority of councils are still adopting their budget late June at the moment. That's where most that I'm aware of are aiming for.
Yeah. But, so just a heads up for councillors to help with decisions on Monday. I've asked the staff to do some calculations to work out what would be the cost in terms of revenue if council was to delay approval of the budget by to the end of the month, as opposed to the date that it's we have the special meeting set down by. Help inform our decision making on Monday.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm assuming delaying the budget would delay all the fees and charges, any change to fees and charges, any charges.
Yeah,
to rates.
primarily it's the rates notice issue as well, when they would go out, be delayed some weeks, and that's got implications in terms of cash flow and so on.
Well, it's going to be my question. So, what are the implications?
Yeah.
So those are the.
I'd like to just note that that we need a proper discussion about how we can meet community expectations and still meet our deadlines with this financial review. First note I made when I read that was that the fastest way to destroy public trust is to make a promise and then break it. And I stand by that. And I think as a council, there's some.
We're not debating.
Oh no! But I think that I've sort of proposed and for the general meeting that we discuss an adapted format. And I think there may be some opportunities, and I've spoken to Brett about putting something together. Your say with some feedback and submission, but I think that we can meet halfway and deliver on part of that promise.
We can look at those on Monday when we discuss with the full council and the ladies of the meeting, or the item for the full council for discussion.
Fantastic.
I think there's many of us around the table who would like to discuss further options.
Yeah, I think everyone's on the
tick those
same
boxes.
page. Yeah.
All right.
Any other info on that? I mean, got a couple there, and
Information
I'll
required before Monday?
work with Amelia on some ideas as well.
Mr. Chair, just a general question. Because of COVID, the state government has amended the Local Government Act to allow the revenue notice to be changed at any time. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Normally, under the current regulation, the council can't change its, I'll call it its rates notice for want of a better phrase. The things that are on the rates notice, you know, the general rate and separate charges and things like that, at any time during the year. The Minister has said that they are proposing to amend the regulation to allow councils for the 2020-2021 budget year to amend your budget during the year, including your rates notice sort of stuff. As you're aware, we can normally change the budget through budget reviews, which deals with the expenditure side or capital work side, but we can't normally change the rates notice or revenue side because that's fixed at the time of the budget. So they are looking at amending the the regulation to allow councils to vary the budget, including that side of the equation in terms of the rates notice during the year. I'm not aware that that's gone through yet, but certainly they've put out public statements that that's the intent, and I know some other councils may take advantage of that. So that is an opportunity down the track about whether the council wants to do a major budget amendment during the year rather than just changing the expenditure side. So it's an unusual year for that to occur, but you know, we're in unusual times.
Very unusual times.
I'm assuming the reasons behind that is because of the unusual times and the
level of
insecurity around revenue and expenditure.
Level of uncertainty for a lot of councils about, you know, what impact it'll be over 12 months or 3 months or 6 months or whatever. Do they adopt a budget now, then re-adopt another budget in January or whatever it might be? So that safety net
pending another outbreak or not.
Correct. Yeah. I think the Minister had asked around a bunch of CEOs, including myself, about what we thought about the idea, and we said, look, I think it's a good idea because it'll be a safety net. You know, if there's a second wave or something else major happens, you might need to go back and revisit your budget in a major way. So that was the intent, I think, of what they're proposing in the regulation.
And is that budget review in September? Right? Is that
we normally have a number of budget reviews during the year, and putting aside the COVID year, we'd normally have a number where we look at that. I see Michael's online. Michael, just in our normal years, what's our cycle for BR1 and 2 and so on? It's normally about July, August for the number 1 with the carryovers, and then later in the year for, what's the other ones?
Yeah, that's right.
So for BR1's what, normally July or August for the carryover? What are the other ones?
August for carryovers, and we're looking at probably February,
okay.
March for the second one, yeah.
Yep.
So will there be one in September, Michael?
No, we generally go, we were running on a 3 budget review cycle, but we've done a review of that, and it's a bit, the cost benefit hasn't been there in previous years, and so we're looking at a 2 budget review cycle going forward. So you're probably looking at August for carryovers, and then after Christmas, which gives a better indication of how we're travelling throughout the year, and then gives us that flexibility to adjust the budget within February, March.
So any changes that would normally go through BR2, which is in September, we'd be doing after Christmas?
Look, but we got flexibility. You know, in uncertain times, you can do a budget review at any month.
Okay.
So we got flexibility.
Right.
Okay.
So yes, in the event that some funding became available and the like, we'd be able to review what that funding was spent on and what projects may or may not be adjusted as a result.
Yep.
Thank you. Nothing further?
I'll move that go to the general.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you, Claudia. All in favour of general. Move on to item 4, the Councillor Remuneration 3. Any questions?
Just general comment, Mr. Chair, this is part of a whole raft of cost-cutting measures that the council is looking at this budget. It's a budget like none other, brought about by the cataclysmic effect on the community's finances, the nation's finances, the world's finances, financial considerations. So it's the responsible thing to do, as the Mayor said, and this is just one of many sort of freezes, cuts, cost-saving measures that we'll be looking at in this budget, and it's meant to be looked at in that context, I think. It's not,
Can I have a mover?
I'll move.
Amelia, seconder. Frank, thank you. No further discussion, all in favour? The ayes have it. And I think that's our last item on the agenda. Thank you all for your